Harrison Cole stopped mid-step when the sound hit him, bright, careless laughter slipping under the mansion's quiet like sunlight through a crack. It came from the sunroom. For a second he thought it was the television or a visitor's child, or his imagination playing a cruel trick. But then it happened again, louder, followed by a thump and a squeal that could only belong to 8-year-olds who had forgotten how to be afraid. His twins, Miles and Ren. Harrison's hand tightened around the folder he'd carried home from Chicago. He didn't move. He listened, holding his breath the way a man does when he's not sure he wants to know the truth. The Cole estate had many sounds: footsteps from staff, the low hum of the security system, distant traffic from Lake Forest roads. But laughter was not one of them. Not since the funeral. Not since the day the house filled with black suits and polite condolences and his children sat like statues beside the casket, eyes dry, mouths sealed. He crossed the hallway slowly, shoes silent on the polished floor, and stopped at the glass doors. Inside, the sunroom was a mess in the best way. Playing cards scattered over the rug. A bowl of strawberries tipped on its side. Miles was flat on his back, kicking his feet as he laughed, and Ren was actually smiling, wide, unguarded, like she'd forgotten the rules. And there, sitting cross-legged between them, was Ariel Brooks, the new maid. Sleeves rolled up, hair wrapped, palms open as if she'd been invited into a world nobody else could enter. Harrison's pulse climbed, because his children never did this. Not with anyone. And if they were laughing now, it meant one of two things. Either Ariel was a miracle, or she was danger wearing a friendly face. A month earlier, that same sunroom had felt like a museum. Toys lined up neatly, never touched. A chess set Harrison bought sat unopened. The twins moved through the house like guests who planned to leave soon. It wasn't that Miles and Ren were rude. They were worse than rude. They were unreachable. After their mother, Celeste, died suddenly, every adult tried to fix them. Therapists with gentle voices. Tutors with bright flashcards. Nannies with perfect resumes and soft smiles. One lasted 3 days before Miles hid her keys in a cereal box and watched her cry. Another quit after Ren stared at her for hours without blinking, like she was waiting for the woman to vanish. Harrison told himself the problem was safety. Careful with strangers. Careful with gossip. Careful with anything that could touch his kids. So he hired more help. And he installed more cameras. But the more staff he rotated in, the tighter the children's silence became. They trusted no one because trust meant loss. Trust meant you loved someone, and then one day they were gone and everyone spoke in past tense. Harrison understood that feeling too well. Still, he kept trying because he didn't know what else to do besides work, sign checks, and pretend money could pad grief. Then his house manager slid a file across his desk. Ariel Brooks, domestic support, recommended by a small service on the South Side. No degrees. No big-name references. Just a steady work history and one note at the bottom. Doesn't push. Doesn't perform. She listens. And if you've ever shut down after losing someone, if you've ever stopped trusting because it hurt too much, this silence might feel familiar. Let us know in the comments if you've ever been there too. Ariel Brooks arrived on a Tuesday morning with no announcement and no expectations. Harrison barely remembered approving her hire. She wasn't a nanny technically. Just extra help. Laundry. Light cooking. Keeping the house running while he stayed late in the city. She wore plain clothes, sensible shoes, and carried herself like someone used to being overlooked. When Harrison passed her in the hallway that first day, she nodded politely and stepped aside, eyes lowered. No questions. No nervous chatter. No attempt to impress him. That alone made him uneasy. Most people tried too hard around him. They smiled bigger, talked faster, mentioned his companies as if they were old friends. Ariel did none of that. She moved through the house quietly as if it belonged to someone else, and she respected that. The children noticed her before he did. Miles paused when she knelt to wipe juice from the kitchen floor. Ren lingered in the doorway when Ariel hummed softly while folding towels. Ariel never called out to them, never said their names like bait. She simply existed in the same space, calm and unbothered. On the third day, Harrison saw something strange on the security monitor in his study. Ariel sat at the far end of the dining table eating lunch alone. No tray for the kids. No coaxing. Then Ren appeared. She didn't sit, just stood there watching. Ariel kept eating. After a long moment, Ren pulled out a chair and sat down. No words were exchanged. Harrison leaned closer to the screen, confused by the tightness in his chest. It wasn't what Ariel was doing. It was what she wasn't. She wasn't trying to be trusted. And somehow that made all the difference. By the end of the first week, Ariel had broken every unspoken rule in the house. She didn't wake the children at strict times. She didn't force eye contact. She didn't insist on conversation during meals or schedule fun activities like the nannies before her. She didn't flinch when Miles ignored her or when Ren answered questions with silence. She let things be awkward. Harrison watched it all from a distance, uneasy. In his world, results came from pressure, from structure, from control. Ariel operated like time was her ally. When Miles refused to do his homework, Ariel shrugged and said, "It'll still be there later." When Ren pushed her plate away untouched, Ariel slid it aside without comment and finished her own food slowly. No lectures. No disappointment. One afternoon, Harrison came home early and found the twins on the living room floor, surrounded by old photo albums. Ariel sat nearby, sorting laundry, not hovering. "Who showed them those?" Harrison asked sharply. Ariel looked up, calm. "They asked where their mom's pictures were." Harrison froze. Nobody ever talked about Celeste out loud. "They can handle it?" he asked. Ariel met his eyes for the first time. "They already are," she said softly. "They just need space to do it." That night, as Harrison lay awake listening to the house settle, he realized something unsettling. Ariel wasn't trying to replace anyone. She was making room. And somehow his children were stepping into it on their own. The first real shift happened at dinner, and it was so quiet Harrison almost missed it. He sat at the head of the long dining table, pretending to read emails while the children picked at their food. That had become routine. Plates served, plates barely touched, silence heavy enough to feel. Ariel moved in and out of the room, clearing dishes without comment. When Ren pushed her plate away, untouched as usual, Harrison felt the familiar tension rise in his chest. He waited for the reminder, the gentle insistence, the performance of concern. It never came. Instead, Ariel sat down at the far end of the table with her own plate. She ate slowly, deliberately, as if she had nowhere else to be. She didn't look at Ren. Didn't comment on the food. Just chewed and swallowed, calm and steady. Minutes passed. Harrison shifted in his chair. Then Ren did something she hadn't done in months. She slid her plate back. Not all the way. Just close enough. Ariel noticed but didn't react. She took another bite. Ren picked up her fork. It was a small thing. A few bites of chicken. A piece of bread torn in half. But Harrison felt his throat tighten as he watched his daughter eat in the presence of another adult without shutting down. When the meal ended, Ren didn't run off. She stayed. And for the first time since Celeste died, Harrison wondered if healing didn't arrive with speeches or specialists. Maybe it arrived quietly. On a chair pulled just close enough to the table. Miles' scream cut through the house just after midnight. Harrison jolted awake, heart racing, already out of bed before his mind caught up. Night terrors had become routine, Sharp cries, thrashing sheets, a child trapped somewhere his father couldn't reach. He ran toward the sound. Then he stopped, because the screaming faded. Not into silence but into something else. A low hum. Soft, steady, almost rhythmic. Harrison stood in the hallway outside Miles' room, hand hovering over the doorframe. Inside the lights were dim. Ariel sat on the floor beside the bed, her back against the wall, close enough to be felt but not touched. Miles twisted under the blankets, breath uneven. Ariel didn't speak. She hummed. The same 3 notes, over and over like she had all the time in the world. Her voice wasn't loud or pretty. It was grounding. Real. The kind of sound you leaned on without realizing it. Slowly Miles' breathing changed. His fists unclenched. The tension drained from his small body until he rolled onto his side, eyes fluttering shut. Ariel waited. Only when she was sure he was asleep did she stand and step back. Harrison retreated into the shadows, his chest tight, his mind racing. He knew that tune. He hadn't heard it in years. And no one, no staff member, no friend, no family should have known it. As Ariel passed him in the hallway, she paused just briefly. "He'll be okay," she said quietly. Harrison couldn't speak, because in that moment he wasn't sure if she was talking about his son, or all of them. Harrison didn't sleep that night. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, the tune looping in his head like a memory that refused to stay buried. 3 notes. Soft rises. A pause at the end. It wasn't a song you heard on the radio. It was something learned in private, in moments meant only for family. Celeste used to hum it while rocking the twins near the window, Chicago traffic glowing far below. She said her own mother taught it to her when words felt too heavy. Harrison hadn't heard it since the hospital room went quiet. Yet Ariel knew it. The next morning Harrison watched her closely. Too closely. He noted how she moved, how she listened, how she never lingered where she wasn't invited. When she hummed again while folding laundry, Harrison felt his chest tighten. He waited until the kids were outside before speaking. "That song," he said carefully. "Where did you learn it?" Ariel's hands paused. Just for a second. "My mother," she replied. Then she added, "and your wife." The words landed hard. Harrison stared at her, unsure if he'd heard correctly. Ariel didn't rush to explain. She simply returned to folding a small blue shirt, smoothing it with care. "She used to visit a community center on the south side," Ariel continued quietly. "Not for press. Not for donations. Just to help." Harrison felt the ground shift under him. Celeste never talked about that part of her life. Not in detail. "Why didn't you say something?" he asked. Ariel met his eyes. "Because this isn't about me." Harrison realized then that the song wasn't a coincidence. It was a bridge. And somehow Ariel had walked across it straight into his children's hearts. That evening Harrison did something he hadn't done in months. He rewound the cameras. Not to check for mistakes. Not to catch missteps. But to understand what he'd been missing. He watched Ariel sit on the floor while the kids drew in silence. He watched her lose a card game on purpose without making a show of it. He watched her listen, really listen, when Miles spoke in half sentences, never correcting him, never finishing his thoughts. There were no grand gestures. No breakthroughs caught on tape. Just presence. At one point, Ren leaned against Ariel's shoulder while watching a movie, her body stiff at first, then slowly relaxing. Ariel didn't move. Didn't acknowledge it. She just stayed. Harrison leaned back in his chair, unsettled. Every professional he hired came armed with strategies. Trauma-informed language. Behavioral plans. Timelines for progress. Ariel came with none of that. And yet the children were changing. They slept longer. More. Spoke in fuller sentences. They didn't look over their shoulders as often. For the first time, Harrison questioned the walls he built: cameras, schedules, distance disguised as protection. The cameras had always shown him what was wrong. Now they were showing him something else entirely. That healing didn't come from watching. It came from staying. And for the first time, Harrison wasn't sure if he knew how to do that himself. Harrison chose the kitchen for the conversation because it felt neutral, ordinary, safer than the rooms filled with memory. Ariel dried her hands on a towel and waited. She didn't ask what this was about. She already knew. "You said you knew my wife," Harrison began. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. "I need to understand how." Ariel nodded once. "That's fair." She sat at the small breakfast table, folding the towel neatly beside her. "Years ago, your wife volunteered at a community center on the south side, near where I grew up. She came every Thursday evening, helped with after-school meals, homework. Sometimes she just listened." Harrison swallowed. He had known Celeste was kind. He hadn't known this. "My mother worked there," Ariel continued. "Cleaning. Sometimes cooking. When she got sick, we fell behind on rent. Real fast." Harrison felt his chest tighten. "Your wife noticed," Ariel said. "She didn't make a big thing of it. Just helped us figure things out. Paid a bill. Found resources. She told my mother, no family should fall apart over money." Harrison closed his eyes. "That song," he said quietly. "She hummed it while she worked," Ariel replied. "She said it helped the kids feel less alone." Silence settled between them. "Why apply here?" Harrison asked. Ariel met his gaze. "Because I recognized your name. And because when I heard about your kids, I knew what silence like that feels like." After that conversation, Harrison found himself remembering things he'd once dismissed as small. Celeste insisting on driving herself into the city. Celeste coming home tired but peaceful. Celeste humming in the kitchen without explanation. He'd assumed those were quirks, distractions from a life he thought he fully understood. He was wrong. "She talked about you," Ariel said later that week, when Harrison asked what his wife had been like back then. "Not by name. Just as her family." Harrison looked up sharply. "She said she had children she worried about," Ariel continued. "That she wanted them to grow up kind, not careful. Brave, not guarded." The words felt aimed directly at him. "My mom used to say your wife saw people the way they could be," Ariel added. "Not the way the world treated them." Harrison stared out the window at the yard where Miles and Ren were kicking a soccer ball, shouting to each other without fear. That sight still felt fragile. Temporary. "I didn't know her like that," he admitted. Ariel didn't contradict him. She didn't need to. "She never wanted credit," Ariel said. "She believed real help should feel invisible." That night, Harrison stood in his study long after the house went quiet, surrounded by awards, photographs, framed articles that celebrated a man who built empires. And for the first time he understood something that unsettled him deeply. The most important thing Celeste ever built wasn't something he could see. And somehow, the woman sitting quietly downstairs had helped finish what his wife started. Guilt arrived slowly, then all at once. It settled in Harrison's chest during ordinary moments. Watching Miles laugh too loud, seeing Ren sleep through the night, hearing both children argue over something trivial. Normal things. Things he should have been grateful for. Instead, he felt exposed. He realized how often he had chosen efficiency over presence. How quickly he signed checks instead of sitting down. How easily he convinced himself that protection meant distance, that love could be outsourced to professionals with credentials and calm voices. Celeste had never done that. She stayed. Harrison stood in the hallway one evening and watched Ariel help the kids with homework. not by correcting them but by asking questions that made them think. When Miles grew frustrated, Ariel didn't jump in. She waited. When he solved the problem himself, his smile was shy and proud. Harrison felt something twist inside him. He had missed so much. Later that night, Harrison poured himself a drink he didn't finish. He sat in the dark and admitted something he hadn't allowed himself to think before. His children hadn't shut the world out. They had been waiting. Waiting for someone who wouldn't leave when things got quiet and hard and slow. And it terrified him to realize that someone hadn't been him. The changes didn't announce themselves. They crept in quietly, like light shifting across a room. Miles started sleeping until morning. Ren began asking questions again, small ones at first. Where did socks go when they disappeared? Why did Storm sound angry? Ariel answered honestly, never rushing, never pretending to know everything. At school, teachers sent emails Harrison read twice to be sure he understood. More engaged. Participating. Smiling. At home, the twins started sitting closer to him on the couch. Not touching, but near enough to matter. One afternoon, Harrison came home early and found Ariel braiding Ren's hair. Ren sat perfectly still, trusting. Miles lay on the rug beside them, drawing quietly. Dad, Miles said without looking up, Ariel says people don't disappear. They just change where they stand in your life. Harrison swallowed hard. He looked at Ariel. She met his eyes gently, as if to say, I didn't teach them that. I just gave them space to find it. That night, Harrison realized something else. The house felt different. Not quieter. Warmer. The storm arrived without warning. Wind battered the trees, rain slamming against the windows hard enough to rattle them. The power went out just after dinner, plunging the house into darkness. Miles panicked first. The sudden loss of light sent him scrambling, breath sharp, hands shaking. Ren followed close behind, fear rising fast. Harrison fumbled for his phone flashlight. Ariel was already there. Come on, she said softly. Let's sit together. They gathered in the living room, candles lit, shadows dancing on the walls. Ariel told stories, not fairy tales but memories. Losing power in her old apartment. Neighbors sharing food. Laughter echoing down stairwells. The wind howled outside. Miles leaned against Ariel. Ren held her hand. Harrison watched from across the room, heart pounding, not with fear but with awe. In the dark, without schedules or safety nets, his children were calm. Because someone was staying. Harrison heard it by accident. He was halfway down the hall when Miles' voice drifted out of the living room. She feels like home, he said quietly. Ren nodded. Like Mom did. Harrison stopped breathing. He pressed his hand to the wall, steadying himself as the words sank in. Home wasn't a place. It wasn't square footage or security systems or staff. It was a feeling. And somehow, Ariel had become that feeling for his children. That night, Harrison stood in his study long after everyone else had gone to bed, staring at the door Ariel always closed softly behind her. Fear settled in his gut. Because he knew what came next. People who made you feel safe eventually left. And he wasn't ready for that again. Ariel packed light. Harrison noticed it one morning when he passed her room and saw a small suitcase tucked neatly in the corner. You travel a lot? He asked casually. Ariel smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I move when it's time. Later she explained. Loss had taught her to leave first. To help, to love, to build something steady, and then step away before it broke. She believed people deserved to stand on their own once they remembered how. I don't stay where I become the reason, she said quietly. Harrison understood more than he wanted to. Because that meant she was already preparing to go. The envelope waited on Harrison's desk. Plain. Folded carefully. His name written in neat handwriting. He didn't open it at first. When he did, the words were gentle and final. Ariel thanked him for trusting her. She wrote about the children with warmth and respect. She said they were ready now. They've remembered how to feel safe, the letter read. That part belongs to you. Harrison sat heavily in his chair. He had built companies from nothing, negotiated deals that reshaped industries. He had never felt this helpless. All his life, Harrison believed control was protection. If he planned enough, watched enough, guarded enough, nothing bad would happen. But love didn't work that way. He watched the kids laugh in the yard, unaware of the change coming. He imagined the house without Ariel's quiet presence. Empty again. This time he didn't want to let that happen. Ariel stood by the front door, coat on, bag in hand. Miles hovered nearby, anxious. Wren's eyes were wet but determined. "You're leaving," Wren said. "For now," Ariel replied softly. Harrison stepped forward. His voice shook. "Please don't go," he said. "Not like this." Ariel hesitated. "Do families always leave?" Wren asked. The question landed like a weight. Harrison dropped to one knee. "No," he said firmly. "Not if they choose to stay." He looked at Ariel. "Stay. Not because you're needed, but because you belong." Silence stretched. Then Ariel nodded. Ariel stayed. Not because she was asked again. Not because she owed anyone anything. She stayed because, for the first time in a long while, leaving felt like the wrong choice. Nothing about the house changed on paper. No contracts rewritten. No announcements made. But everything else shifted. Miles slept through the night more often than not. When he woke from bad dreams, he no longer panicked at the dark. Wren started laughing loudly again, the way she used to, the sound echoing down hallways that had once felt too big and empty. She talked about her mother without freezing, without fear that saying her name might make her disappear all over again. Harrison learned how to stay. Not hovering. Not watching from screens. But sitting on the floor. Listening without fixing. Being there when silence came and not rushing to fill it. Some nights, the four of them sat together in the living room, lights low, nothing urgent needing to be said. Ariel would hum softly. The children would lean closer. And Harrison would feel something he hadn't felt since Celeste was alive. He realized then that family wasn't about blood or titles or roles you hired people to play. It was about who showed up when things were quiet and hard. Who stayed when there was nothing to gain. The house still had cameras. Staff still came and went. Life kept moving. But the walls no longer felt cold. Because love, Harrison finally understood, wasn't something you guarded. It was something you practiced. And maybe that's why this story feels close to home. Because somewhere in it, there's a version of us. Someone who needed patience, someone who stayed, or someone who learned too late how much presence matters. If this story moved you, take a moment to like it, subscribe for more stories like this, and share in the comments what family means to you. Sometimes, the quiet stories are the ones that stay with us the longest.